welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series. And we are calling it that because there's a wonderful new book out, which I encourage you to pick up, titled A San Francisco Conservative. And the author of that book, as well as another wonderful book titled Income and Wealth, is my good friend, David Parker. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm fine. Nice to see you, Tom.
Good to see you. Good to see you. It's interesting. We've talked about so many things, over the years, and I love our conversations. And in fact, that's what inspired us to start this podcast series so that others could benefit as well. And I'm some of you know at this point that I'm a longtime journalist, worked for CBS News, CNN, the Today Show, Good Morning America, and so on, including covering politics in Washington for a number of years for CBS. And I've always felt that, yes, it's important to report on the events of the day, but often people have, especially Americans, dare I say, have short attention spans, or they don't know the deep historical context that would really, give them a better understanding of a lot of things in the headlines right now. And one of those, I think experience and context are really important. And David, I'd love it if you would just take a few minutes to tell people about, you have a great, background. I love friends who I call, a Renaissance man or a Renaissance woman. You've worn and continue to wear many hats over the years, right?
Right. I suppose one reason I write is I have deep intuition for political economy. And I could be an ignorant person or a very well educated person. It's my intuition. But when you combine the intuition with deep experience, I just it gives me some surety.
Yeah. And you're an investor, you're a lifelong educator, you're a lifelong investor, entrepreneur, musician. Yeah.
Right. So as a musician, I played in the Berkeley Symphony, which is very serious, modern, contemporary music. Recorded at Lucas Studios. Then 20 years, the Dave Parker Sextet. We performed last night. I have some of the best musicians in San Francisco. We headlined a couple of years at the Fillmore Jazz Festival. As a teacher, I taught inner city schools, not out of city schools, inner city schools for 40 years. And I know people from all cultures, and I love people. Multicultural environment. And then in business, I had intuition for investing in real estate, and have done, I'm not sure how to say it, enormously well. And then writing, I went back to school. After a master's degree in music, I started studying economics, and I realized I didn't know what I was talking about. So I went back and took 67 units of math and economics straight, and everything in the catalog that I have and been reading now and writing 3 to 5 hours a day for the last 30 years. I have a good 35,000 hours of postgraduate study in economics.
That's amazing.
So I like to say that I think I know what I'm talking about.
Well, it's funny. I think I respect all of that very much. I think I might have mentioned to you recently that one of my favorite authors these days is Malcolm Gladwell, who writes for the New Yorker, and he wrote, The Tipping Point. And the first Malcolm Gladwell book I read or maybe heard audio was called Blink. And he said, in these different professions, whether you can detect art forgeries or you're a police officer, who might be in an unexpected violent situation, they, could go on and on. You talked about intuition and instinct. And so over all that experience that you just described, you have some very impressive instincts and intuition that, you have a track record, again, obviously in real estate and the lives of the children you've taught over the years, I would say. But tell us about some of the predictions you've made over the years. I'm really fascinated by this.
Well, in 2008, at the beginning of the financial crisis, not years later, the minute it happened, I says 10-year recovery, and then followed by 10 more years of low economic growth and low interest rates. And that is exactly how it played out and is playing out. The 10 years of no growth is a little less than 10 years. The economy is heating up right now, but not so far off. But at the moment it happened, as I predicted it, not later. In 2010, this was called the Euro crisis, and Greece defaulted on its sovereign debt, mostly to the European Union, mostly to Germany. And people were sweating it out. Is the European Union going to fall? If one country backs out and wants their own currency back again, other countries are going to do it, and that's the end of the European Union. People were panicking. And I said, at the moment, no crisis, no panic. And it says, people say, well, how are you so sure about that? The euro did not fall 1 cent throughout, or 1 centime throughout the whole crisis. There's no question in my mind. Germany will not let that happen, because Germany is one of the great currency manipulators of the world. They should be on the Deutschmark and suffering from a very high valued currency and not selling half their automobiles. But they created the euro so they can be in a union of less productive countries and less efficient countries. And they're so efficient that they outsell everybody in the world, or certainly in Europe. It's pure currency manipulation. They should be on a Deutschmark and not on the euro. They wouldn't be so hot today. So I predicted that, and sure enough, there was no crisis. It resolves, and Germany just made up.
It seems like I want to hear about a couple other predictions too, which I'm impressed by. I just thought I'd take a break for a moment. Again, remind people that you're listening to a San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series, and that is the title of David Parker's newest book, as well as Income and Wealth. And David, I just can't resist asking one question before you continue. It seems like so many of us are prone to panic. Like, oh my gosh, the stock market took a notable downturn, and I better cash out my retirement fund or something like that. But you don't seem to panic easily, right?
No, I'm unaware of what's going on in the world. One of my main themes in my first book, Income and Wealth, is everyone's economic goal should be financial independence. And you should be independent by the time you're 30. Just live a little Spartan lifestyle for a while, save half your salary, and invest with leverage into income producing assets. Stocks are not income producing. They may pay no dividends, or they may pay 20 years from now, but they don't pay often. So real estate is one income producing asset. You could buy the house next door. Next year, every year you buy one. You buy the house next door, you buy the house next door, buy the corner grocery, buy a truck, buy a fleet of trucks, an asset that produces income. And you'll be just surprised after 10 years, you've paid off all the loans, whatever you used to borrow, the rates never went up, they were locked in, and your income went up. All of a sudden, and you have tax write-offs galore, which middle class usually doesn't have, and all of a sudden you're independent at that wage. And I give a detailed analysis for an employee at McDonald's, with their 401ks, with how their state and federal tax goes down a few dollars, goes down a few more dollars, goes down, depreciation adds up. Pretty soon it happens very quickly.
Yeah. And when you got started, you weren't working at a fast food restaurant or anything, but teachers in inner city public schools do not make a ton of money, but you still saw the light and said, this is something I want to do. How did you get started on that path?
Well, I just, as a young teacher, I finally saved up $1,500. I was going to put my first down payment on a house. And the agent was an older guy. He was just having fun being a real estate agent. He was retired. And I realized I knew more than he. And I said, I have some feeling for this thing. And I says, how do you become a real estate agent? Well, just go to a real estate school and 10 lessons. And are you 18? Do you have a green card? That's all you need. and so I started to a few months to sell. My broker fired me. He says, you're not a real estate agent. You're an investor. You don't think or talk like an agent. Start investing right now. And I did. And this might be pretentious, but in my whole life, I never earned more than $20,000 a year. I've never spent less than $100,000 a year just on my first class airline tickets. And I've never purchased less than $1 million a year in real estate, never less.
Wow.
Just, I'm a leveraged buyout guy. I just, that's in my blood. I just knew how to learn. I knew how to finance real estate. So
Great.
That's pure instinct. I would buy stuff that people thought I was nuts. I knew this is going to work. And usually I'm not, usually they did.
Yeah,
So-
no, it's very, very impressive. We just have a couple of minutes left, and I can't resist asking, I mean, again, on that topic of panic and confidence and so on, and also really understanding the economy, certainly, and as a journalist, I notice, well, what's in the headlines right now is inflation, highest inflation rate in 40 years. And what should we make of that, do you think?
You have to understand what inflation is. And Milton Friedman, again, is the person who labeled it. Inflation is when you're printing money and with no basis to it. And people really paid with real money for their home or their art or for their pensions. And it's all of a sudden it's wiped out with inflation. So it's really bad. But when the demand rises for something because people are making more money or because supply is limited like it is right now, and so demanders are just pushing the price to get that supply, that's not inflation in my mind. That's just genuine demand exceeding supply, and that's not going to last. I went to buy a pair of running shoes and they didn't have my size. They said, I'll order you a pair. Then he says to me, how long do you think it's going to take before that pair comes in? I says, well, a month, a year.
Oh my gosh.
He says, these happen to be made. You think it's American, but they're made in China, he says. And China has closed for the pandemic. Even now, their factories are closed up. And when they open up again, you just take a number. You're in line. There are people ahead of you waiting for those shoes to be manufactured. A year.
Wow.
So I feel like saying, I'll pay double for those shoes. They don't cost, they're $100. I'll pay you $200 for the pair of shoes. That's how demand pushes price.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's not, I don't call it inflation.
Right.
Inflation is a good word because everybody understands it's something is wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not inflation.
Well, good to think about. Well, I
So
think
don't
we're out of
panic.
time. I'm sorry. Go
Don't
ahead.
panic. It's going to come back down again.
Yeah. Those are words I wanted to hear. I appreciate that. Good. Well, I think we're out of time for today's episode, but it's great to see you as always. And I just want to remind our audience to be sure to pick up a copy of David's books, as he said, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative. You can do that by visiting David's website, which is davidparkeressays.com, or by going to Amazon. So thanks, David. Great to see you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.